You're live with the guy, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. The Fantastic Four, Trump versus Beyonce, and all your other pop culture news of the day. I got Nat over here as my producer.
Hello.
Okay, well, let's get into it. I hope everybody had a good weekend. Let's talk about Fantastic Four, and it had some surprising numbers actually this weekend.
From Deadline, Fantastic Four first steps, lighter at 118 million, but still super in opening.
Okay, I was actually expecting this movie to kind of bomb at 90 million. It had a pretty good opening couple days. That means the pre-showings and Friday. When it went into Saturday, it did have a big drop, but it still made the 118 million domestically. Let's see what it made internationally. It made 218 internationally on top of that. So I was kind of expecting a 90 million domestic box office, but obviously some people wanted to see Fantastic Four, and I think it was Pedro Pascal fans, the community and people that like the messaging, went out to support Pedro, I guess. He has been getting a lot of bad press lately, so that was somewhat surprising. Let's go a little bit into the article.
Marvel Studios Disney's The Fantastic Four First Steps is coming in lighter at 118 million after a 42% slide on Saturday against Friday's previews for what was 33.2 million. 100 million plus opening for the industry. What major studio wouldn't want that? Also, for a superhero movie to continue to do 100 million plus in its 3-day start is very good for capes.
Yeah, I'm expecting a huge drop off for this movie. Already from Friday to Saturday, I had a 42% drop off. I'm expecting week to week, maybe a 60 to 70% drop off. Most likely 70%. I mean, if Jurassic Park had a 72% drop off, this movie should have a major drop off here.
But also in the article, it sounds like they're really trying to cope and say, oh yeah, it doesn't mean what you think it means.
Yeah, also the article is saying it came in slightly less than projected. The projections were extremely high for this movie. There was a lot of indications why this movie might have been up for a cancellation or why it would have had low box office numbers. It is somewhat low compared to the mainstream media's projections. My projections, I was going to be surprised if it broke 100 million. So it got better than what I kind of projected, but I think my projections overall are going to be fairly secure when the final numbers come in. F1 and Superman both crossed the $500 million mark this weekend. I don't think Fantastic Four is going to do that. That being said, this was the first movie for Marvel to break 100 million in the opening weekend. Then again, I don't think after this opening weekend it's going to do too well. The fact that it did get that $100 million opening weekend for Marvel, at least they got those headlines, because I think the rest of the headlines coming out from this movie aren't going to be well. You can already see the cope in mainstream movie articles talking about Pedro Pascal. They're saying everybody that's hating on Pedro Pascal online, these are all bots. These are paid bots from other studios, from other studios. That being said, everybody that I know in the independent media absolutely despises this guy. The fact that he hasn't been canceled yet is really surprising. That being said, he does have another new movie coming out this weekend, I believe it is. Let me check. Well, yeah, it's coming out this month. It's Eddington. Eddington is a political-based movie. It was at Sundance, so a lot of people might have thought this movie already came out, but it's getting more of a mainstream release. I don't know if it's going to get wide distribution, especially in the political climate. They may have a wide market release, but kind of want to have it slip under the radar because it's highly political. It has jibby jab eras with the masks. It has BLM in it. It has MAGA. It has a lot of political messaging. So if this movie did get widescreen release, I think a lot of actors, because it did have a lot of well-known actors other than Pedro Pascal, might be up for cancellation. So especially with the amount of winning Trump's doing lately, they might want to slip this under the widescreen release. Why don't you read it? Oh, actually, why don't we go into the secondary article I have on this? I have 2 articles on Fantastic Four. And you got that for us, or?
Can you move your mic a little bit further away from you? It's too loud. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Fantastic Four scores Marvel's first 100 million box office opening of 2025. Marvel's first family has finally found box office gold. The Fantastic Four First Steps, the first film about the superheroes made under the guidance of Kevin Feige and the Walt Disney Company, earned
Okay. So to call this thing box office gold, that's extremely premature. They got that headline of $100 million box office. I said before, and I don't know if this is the case, this hasn't been wide stream in the movie industry, but in the record industry, record companies will literally buy millions of copies of their own albums from stores to make the Billboard charts, and hopefully there's an organic snowball effect after that. They kind of contrive the numbers in order to get mainstream recognition from the general public. As far as the Fantastic Four goes, I think this thing was going to bomb and still is going to bomb at the theaters. They might have wanted to get this one headline of we made $100 million for the first time and hope for an organic snowball effect. I'm not saying that's what happened here, but if you did want to spend the minimal amount of money to get a headline, it would be for opening weekend.
But I mean, it's also, they're really being technical here because it's Marvel's first 100 million box office opening of 2025 because Deadpool and Wolverine did 211 million. And then this is fourth behind Minecraft movie, Lilo and Stitch, and Superman. So
what did Deadpool and Wolverine do?
211 million.
In the opening weekend.
Out of the gate.
So how are they saying this was their first 100 million?
Of 2025.
Oh.
Marvel's first 100 million of 2025.
And I guess Deadpool and Wolverine made 200 million, so that's not exactly 100 million, it's 200 million.
Mm-hmm.
So
and that was last year.
Yeah. Okay, let's go a little bit more into this article.
Sorry. Internationally, Fantastic Four made 100 million from 52 territories, adding up to 218 million worldwide debut, still very low. The numbers were within range of what the studio was expecting, because maybe they've given up. The film arrived in the wake of another big superhero reboot, James Gunn's Superman, which opened 3 weekends ago and has already crossed 500 million globally. That film, from the other main player in comic book films, DC Studios, took second place with 24.9 million domestically.
Yeah, and Superman has been out long enough where everybody that wanted to see Superman kind of had seen it. I was kind of suggesting Superman should have made a secondary promotional campaign, pitting itself against Fantastic Four, really pitting Marvel against DC. They chose not to do that. And whoever wanted to see Fantastic Four, I don't see Superman as competition for this weekend because it literally had already been out for 3 weeks and it already had its drop-offs. So also, that being said, Pedro Pascal is getting a lot of hate in the independent media. I know a lot of these articles are saying these are bots, but even alternative political shows like The Lotus Eaters did an episode about Pedro Pascal and how much they hate him. The Lotus Eaters typically does not do pop culture. I can't remember the last time they did any kind of pop culture. It's a EU political show on YouTube. So the fact that they're talking about Pedro Pascal, independent political shows in the EU, this is just showing that these probably aren't bots. So
I'm still amazed nobody's talking about his dad, but whatever. I tried a month ago, nobody listened.
Yeah.
Well, WDW Pro did listen.
Yeah. So
thank you to them.
Okay, let's go into the second story of the day, and that was actually the thumbnail of Donald Trump and Beyonce.
So from Fandom Wire, truth behind Beyonce's 11 million paycheck allegation, Donald Trump's demand. Donald Trump accused Beyonce of breaking the law by accepting an alleged 11 million paycheck to endorse Kamala Harris's 2024 presidential campaign.
Yeah, and there's all kinds of articles going back and forth, and this has to do with more about free speech, and I'll get kind of into that conversation today, but let's talk first about this article and the other articles that are like it. You're having one side saying that Trump is lying, that this is defamation. You're having Trump's side saying this is far beyond defamation. This is actually illegal. You're not allowed to pay for endorsements. They're claiming Kamala Harris actually paid for endorsements. Now, there's a technicality here because technically they did pay for the endorsements, but they paid these superstars corporations or companies. They didn't make the payment directly to the individual, such as Beyonce and Oprah Winfrey. So Oprah Winfrey's endorsement was also rumored to be paid for. But let's go a little bit into this article here.
Also, if you hear that noise, it's our dog.
Oh yeah, we have a dog. We have our dog in here. Rather than let her bark, we gave her a peanut butter toy, so she constantly chews on that thing.
Yes. Donald Trump is once again stirring the political pot with an incendiary claim involving Beyonce. On July 26,
one moment, let's take this with a grain of salt, because obviously this is more of a progressive liberal news article. I tend to use progressive liberal news articles. This is mainstream, so I want people to know that opinion.
While visiting Scotland, the U.S. president took to Truth Social to renew his unsubstantiated allegation that Democrats paid the superstar $11 million to endorse Kamala Harris's 2024 presidential campaign. Trump asserted that this payment was probably illegal and demanded prosecutions, accusing Harris and all involved of having broken the law.
Okay, number one, it is illegal to pay for endorsements. So that's 100% completely true, and they can be prosecuted for that. The question is paying one of these superstars companies as an indirect payment, does that actually satisfy an endorsement payment rather than making the payment directly? I would think so, but that would be for a court of law to actually decide, and that would set a precedent if they do go after these endorsements. I would like to see them kind of go after her. Even if they lose, it would at least set the precedent for the next election. You shouldn't be paying for endorsements. So let's go a little bit more into it here.
When Donald Trump first made these accusations months ago, the Federal Election Commission had no record of any $11 million payment to Beyonce from Kamala Harris's campaign. In fact, according to PolitiFact, which, I mean, you can't be super trustworthy, there is no federal law explicitly prohibiting political candidates from paying for endorsements. The $11 million figure appears to have no basis in official filings or credible reports, other than a campaign staffer a few months ago coming out and saying that that's what happened. The Harris campaign outright rejected the rumor last year when it initially surfaced on social media after Beyonce's rally appearance. Tina Knowles, Beyonce's mother, also publicly denounced the claims as false information and a lie in November 2024.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting what happened. We have to know, I was watching something. We do a political show at night, so I know a little bit about politics. But Kamala Harris gave a speech the other day, and nobody was there. I think there was 3 people total. So that I just don't know if all these people actually legitimately endorsed her. That being said, I would like to see election laws cleaned up for the next U.S. election. The U.S. election really has a worldwide impact. We currently live here in Mexico City, but we also lived in Canada. I grew up in the United States a little while, so I'm very interested in U.S. politics. I think it actually affects global politics in a big way. That being said, this case, and not just this case, but there's been cases now with Donald Trump versus 60 Minutes, Alex Jones case, the Candace Owens case, which is coming up. We'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. Fox News, 60 Minutes, CNN, and Kamala Harris. These are all free speech cases of, what do you call it when?
What? Sorry, I was trying to figure out the sound.
Defamation. These are all defamation style cases. So America actually has the strongest free speech laws. I've seen free speech eroded in Canada to a dramatic effect through hate speech. And here in Mexico now, there's the government's making people publicly apologize on X for things they would consider defamation. That being said, all these defamation cases are really going to erode at free speech. That's the angle they're trying to go after the Constitution of America with, are these defamation cases. Alex Jones had over $1 billion against him by the plaintiffs. And now he's appealing that. So we'll see if that kind of works. But the Candace Owens case, which I didn't think was going to be able to go forward, is this Emmanuel Macron and his husband/wife. is that case going to hold up in court? If you don't know about it, the president of France and his wife are going after Candace Owens for 125 different allegations of defamation. She's claiming free speech, and she actually believes in it. When I first looked into it, I thought this was a classic free speech case and this wouldn't hold up, and they would have to actually drop the lawsuit when it went into, what do you call it when you...
Trial?
Not trial, when you go into looking into the background.
Discovery.
So when it went into discovery, I thought Macron may actually drop the case, but after looking at Robert Barnes, I'm not so sure. He did an in-depth analysis of this, and he had some really good points. In his initial analysis, he just kind of said, oh, this is a real case, but he didn't give any points, so I didn't give him any credence. After seeing Robert Barnes, who's a constitutional attorney, really delve into this, I think Macron may actually have a case here, and we'll have to see what happens. I really hope Candace wins on this thing, because we need one country that has firm free speech laws.
Robert Barnes also doesn't like Candace Owens, so of course he's going to try to say it's not going to work.
Well, no, and I had said that previously in the last episode that we did, that, yeah, Robert Barnes absolutely hates Candace Owens, so he does have an axe to grind, but he did make some very good points when he did the analysis, which nobody else really made. So we'll have to see what happens in that case. I'm really excited for discovery in that case. The main reason that case may land against Candace Owens is because of where they brought it. It's in the state of Delaware. Candace Owens is incorporated in the state of Delaware. That's why they were able to bring the case in the state of Delaware. Delaware is a highly political state. It's a highly progressive liberal state. In the defamation lawsuit that they brought up anti-Semitism and a lot of other different type of conspiracies Candace has been involved in. If they can bring that into the case, and then they can get a biased jury that's extremely political, extremely liberal, they may award against her just on those facts alone. So Delaware is one of the states you would want to bring the case in. Other than Delaware, you would see New York or Washington, D.C., which you would have very political juries as well. So just not necessarily based on the facts of the case, but where the case has been brought, the jury may side against Candace Owens here. Okay.
And just a correction, not conspiracies Candace has been involved with, but that she has spoken about. And also anything that
but they're claiming conspiracies. So I'm just talking about the claims made against her.
Yes. And just going back to Beyonce, anything really that can knock her down a few pegs is fine by me. I don't understand the hype around her. But moving on, from Variety, Tron Ares blasts Comic-Con with light cycle and light boat chases, 9 Inch Nails music and video.
Yeah, and they didn't
music
have
video. Sorry.
Yeah, they didn't have the Marvels or anything at Comic-Con, so this was kind of the big release and the big advertising campaign they had. So this is just typical advertising. The scene did look good. The movie does look somewhat good. We'll see what happens here. So there doesn't seem to be any backlash against the movie yet. I'm fairly excited to see it. I like the original Tron far more than I did the remakes. The original Tron was groundbreaking at the time. So why don't we read a little bit about it here?
Tron Ares blew the roof off San Diego Comic-Con and its panel on Friday evening with an eye-popping, ear-blasting laser light show set to the pulsing original score by 9 Inch Nails. The panel also included 2 extended clips from the film and ended with a music video of the original song.
Yeah, and I think a movie like this, especially with visually, it's so distinctive. There's a lot of different advertising avenues, unique advertising avenues I would hope they go into, not just the traditional run-of-the-mill how you're advertising a movie. I think the Marvels, Star Wars, Disney are going along these traditional cookie-cutter methods of promoting movies. You really need to use the independent media. You get more independent media exposure for a lot cheaper by using the independent media, but also alternative media campaigns such as Superman. Superman had a huge giant 100-foot statue put on top of a skyscraper in the UK specifically, held up by wires that was hard to see from a distance. So that was very interesting. I like to see alternative marketing campaigns kind of merged with mainstream marketing campaigns. I think alternative dollars go a lot further than your cookie cutter mainstream TV advertisements. Okay, let's go into Coyote versus Acme here.
From Variety, Coyote vs. Acme lands August 2026 release date. Footage debuts at Comic-Con despite Acme Corp meddling.
Yeah, and this is going to be a live action. This is going to be a live action animated movie crossover. So it's going to be very interesting if this hits. There's been some big successes with Lilo and Stitch lately, but there's also been other movies that just didn't hit. I'm not sure if this is going to work or not. What do you think?
Well, because it seems like it might be 2D animation and live action, it's going to be very reminiscent of Space Jam, which I know a lot of people were very into. I never liked it, but it's good to see that they're fully going back to that maybe.
I mean, I like this idea. I really liked these kind of cartoons are from my era specifically, so it would appeal to me. So people my age maybe have kids now and would take their kids to the theater to watch this. The question, I don't know if it really has a built-in fan base for a younger audience anymore, like Lilo and Stitch and movies like this. Then again, if it's going to have a lot of special effects and practical special effects like car crashes, things like this that are mixed with the animation. So if it's done well, it could work very well. And then they could bring Coyote and the Acme characters back. Let's read a little bit.
Hollywood's improbable underdog Coyote vs. Acme has finally landed a global theatrical release date. Star Will Forte announced at the film's panel at San Diego Comic-Con that the live-action animation hybrid will premiere on August 28th, 2026. Coyote vs. Acme, about Looney Tunes stalwart Wile E. Coyote suing the Acme Corporation for all its faulty tools in his pursuit of the Roadrunner, was infamously shelved by Warner Brothers Discovery in 2023 after it was completed so the company could write off its $30 million budget. The movie was greenlit by previous regime for the streaming service HBO Max, but the team led by WBD's CEO David Zaslav decided to abandon the strategy and focus on theatrical releases instead. The decision led to the notorious cancellation of HBO Max's film Batgirl.
Okay, so this has a pretty small budget of $30 million. If they can get an alternative media campaign for this thing, it could do fairly well. I could see a lot of interesting ideas they could do for marketing here. They will have to do an independent media campaign because usually a marketing budget for a movie is equal to the budget of the movie. So if a movie costs $100 million to make, they spend $100 million on the marketing budget. They spent $30 million to make this movie here, so I would expect they'll be lucky to get a $30 million marketing budget for this thing. Warner Brothers is really struggling right now. So Space Jam's had a built-in basketball fan base, a built-in kids fan base. So I just don't know if this is going to have the built-in fan base. I hope it does. I hope it succeeds. This is something I would like to see kind of make a re-emergence. So alternative animation outside of Disney, I'm a big supporter of. Okay, let's go into the next story here. And this is
speaking of alternative
Five Nights
animation.
at Freddy's.
From Comic Book News, Five Nights at Freddy's 2 trailer confirms December 5th theatrical release. The official trailer for Five Nights at Freddy's 2 has been released, confirming the sequel will hit theaters on December 5th. Blumhouse returns with another installment of animatronic horror based on Scott Cawthon's popular game series.
Yeah, and this actually looks pretty good. They're using primarily, I think they're actually using all real world effects. They're not going to VFX or anything like that. So that's going to be really good. I think this will do a lot better as a sequel than Megan did. Megan really collapsed at the theater this last time, and there's been a lot of talk about horror films can't succeed at the box office anymore. I just think that's a bunch of garbage. That was an article we read from the mainstream media the other day. A lot of horror movies are doing very good. Final Destination, Bloodlines, and I actually watched the making of Final Destination, Bloodlines, and I was surprised how many special effects they actually used because a lot of that looked digital. What movie came out recently that did extremely well?
Final Destination?
In Final Destination, there was something else.
Sinners.
Oh, yeah, Sinners. Sinners did extremely well, and it didn't have the fall off week after week. Very often, horror movies have smaller marketing budgets, so they rely on word of mouth. So they'll have a decent opening week, but if it's a good movie, that word of mouth spreads through the independent media, and it doesn't have the same fall off mainstream movies do with their massive marketing budgets where everybody kind of goes to watch it the first week.
And with Five Nights at Freddy's, I mean, it had a huge campaign online, a lot of people and lore and stuff surrounding it, being in the YouTube sphere and being with other YouTube creators and creating other narratives, etc. So the first one, that's what helped push it and do so well. So using the independent creator space as well and coming from it, I think helped it a lot the first time. And now with the hype, it might as do well. I mean, there were some criticisms about the first one, but overall, I think it still has a lot of support from the initial people that were pushing it.
Yeah, and I think the fact that it's using practical effects, and a lot of people are talking about this, movies that are using practical effects are going to get a lot of free publicity and a lot of publicity going forward, especially with AI emerging. So, okay, let's go into Gwyneth Paltrow. And this was kind of a funny story. And I thought she was married to the lead singer of Coldplay, and I checked it up, and she was.
Yes, they had I spoke about it last time we talked about it. They had a conscious uncoupling a while ago. Chris Martin from Coldplay and Gwyneth Paltrow.
And why that's an important...
But they're still friends.
Why that's an important fact is, let's read the headline here.
Astronomer from... from today, astronomer hires Gwyneth Paltrow after kiss cam scandal.
An astronomer isn't actually an astronomer. It's the company that employed the CEO and the HR director, I believe she was, that were on the kiss cam that made this a huge scandal. This ended up being a huge opportunity for Coldplay to keep promoting this, not only at their concerts, but in the media. I think astronomer wants to put it into this. They don't know how to do it. They hired Gwyneth Paltrow because she has a direct link, not only to the band, but to the lead singer, where if he says, we should stop promoting this at our concerts and in general, it will go away a lot quicker. This must have cost Astronomer, the company, a lot of money to get Gwyneth Paltrow to not only be the spokesperson, but also use her connections with the band to put an end to this, which is speculation on my part, but I'm guessing that's the only reason you would really hire Gwyneth Paltrow as the spokesperson, given she has no real experience.
Well, I mean, she has her own company and she's very good at sweet talking people into buying eggs to insert into weird places. But Astronomer, the tech company whose former executives were caught on camera together during a Coldplay concert, hired frontman Chris Martin's ex-wife Gwyneth Paltrow as a so-called temporary spokesperson. The Goop founder enthusiastically shares information while making no mention of the kiss cam moment.
Yeah, so this is going to be interesting. We'll see if the story kind of disappears now, because this was getting headlines after headlines after headlines for the entire week. It would make new headlines once they fired the CEO. It would make new headlines once his wife left him or didn't leave him. I can't remember. Every time something would happen with the female that was involved in the situation, it would make more headlines. It made more headlines on the next Coldplay concert when they said we have a section that's not videotaped for anybody that is on a date they don't want their other to know about. Then Coldplay made more headlines saying more things on stage about that incident. So they just want this to disappear. This was an extremely viral moment. So it was pretty interesting the amount of marketing Coldplay did kind of get off of this.
But it was a little bit encouraging, in my opinion, the fact that the public's reaction was negative towards a story about cheating, because for the longest time in media and movies and also in TV series.
I'll let you finish in a minute, but yeah, it was negative towards the male for cheating. But the female was cheating as well, and that got almost no headlines. It was one little article I read, so I brought it back up. But they were both cheating, but all the publicity was given to the guy. I thought equal publicity should have been given to both.
In the US, but I did see a lot of Spanish-speaking creators speaking very negatively about the woman as well. Even from a weird feminist perspective, where they were saying, well, women are always accused of sleeping their way to the top, and now look at what you're doing for all females that reach a high level. So, I mean, it wasn't a different slant, but still a lot of people were going against the female as well, at least in Spanish. But what was I saying before that you interrupted me? Kanye. That it was encouraging to see that there was negative publicity about a cheating scandal, because even with one of the latest Pedro Pascal movies, it's all about a romantic triangle, and we see a lot of encouragement of women to, really go for what you want and liberate yourself.
Well,
And
not just recently.
it was nice. The public reaction was very negative.
Over the last 10 years, all these cheating scandals, they've been promoting cheating. They've been promoting female empowerment by not only doing OnlyFans, but cheating on your husband and things like this. So it's a little bit crazy. I know I shouldn't have said that, but the censors on YouTube absolutely hate when you say OF.
Flans.
But it's good to see maybe there is a cultural shift starting to happen where we're not glorifying cheating on your spouse, and maybe morals are slowly seeping into mainstream media, probably through the avenue of independent media kind of asking for these things. Okay, let's go into Jay Leno. And I've actually really liked Jay Leno's take here. Maybe he's looking for a big paycheck in a return.
From Deadline, Jay Leno questions why late night hosts alienate half their audience. Get to the joke.
And if we know, Colbert, along with all the other late night hosts, aren't telling jokes anymore. They're talking more politics, and their jokes just aren't hurting. Michael Jordan famously said, "Conservatives buy shoes too," meaning that's why he didn't like to get political. Jay Leno here is taking a very moderate stance, and I like it, and trying to get politics maybe out of late night.
While many in the late night community are standing by Stephen Colbert, one veteran host has a different perspective. Jay Leno recently commented on the political comedy of today's late night hosts at The Late Show, but Stephen Colbert was unceremoniously canceled at CBS amid the network's dealings with Donald Trump. And here again, Deadline is framing the story in an interesting way. But he said, "I like to think that people come to a comedy show to kind of get away from the things, the pressures of life, whatever it might be," he told David Trulio, president and CEO of the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute. "I love political humor, don't get me wrong, but it's just what happens when people wind up cozying up too much to one side or the other."
Yeah, and political humor can actually work for a comedian on stage, but when you're putting them on network TV, I think the audience is far too big. They're not looking for a niche audience on network TV. You're looking for a mass appeal audience. So non-political comedians would be much better to host late night and shows like this.
Noting that he never discussed politics with close friend and frequent guest Rodney Dangerfield, Leno said, "I don't think anybody wants to hear a lecture. When I was with Rodney, it was always in the economy of words to get the joke as quickly as possible." Leno added, "Well, why shoot for just half an audience all the time? Why not try to get the whole audience? I like to bring people into the big picture. I don't understand why you would alienate one particular group, or just don't do it at all. I'm not saying you have to throw your support or whatever, but just do what's funny."
Yeah, and I'll say this, going after a niche audience isn't necessarily wrong. It's great for YouTubers and people that are trying to come up that don't necessarily want the whole market, that just need part of the market, because even 1% of the market could be millions of people. That being said, mainstream TV is definitely looking for a mainstream audience. Staying away from politics would be a great policy for them in general. I don't know why I do know why the networks didn't implement this as a mainstream policy before, but both Jay Leno and, what was the other king of late night called? He's got a beard now, gray hair. David Letterman. Both Jay Leno and David Letterman got out at the right time, because networks were really going heavy into politics and pushing even non-political comedians into telling political jokes. They were actually able to save their career, save their reputations, and save the way people kind of look at David Letterman and Jay Leno as being not more non-political. Although I will say David Letterman is somewhat political. That's not the view the mainstream has of him, because he didn't engulf it in his shows night after night.
And also, I think if the networks would have had like a counterpart, at least within even just the same network at a different time or different days of the opposite view, less people would be so inflamed about it. And I think both of those shows, for example, would have done a lot better than just the one view and all the late night hosts having the exact same opinion.
Well, I don't even think having a counterpart would save it. Now, what they need to do, the equation is there. Piers Morgan is great. Piers Morgan went from network TV to YouTube. He has one of the biggest audiences on YouTube. He brings a bunch of people on the panels to debate hot topics and politics. Doing that on late night would get a lot of views. So having alternative views on the same show, even the show The View, only has one view. If they would reformat that show to actually have debate, not just amongst the people that host the show, but the people that come on the show. People love to see debate. It works in the independent space. It will work even better in the mainstream space. Piers Morgan is a classic example of this.
The problem is a lot of networks think that that's a lot, like way too dangerous to actually permit and to get canceled. But I think even people themselves are tired of trying to cancel everybody.
Well, that's the thing. I think you can almost avoid cancellation with debate. If you have one debater that pisses everybody off, just bring somebody else on, bring him on again, and bring somebody else on that's even better at debating to have the marketplace of ideas kind of weeded out. People have forgotten about the best ideas should come to the top. Okay, let's go into the last two stories here. And this one is about niche sports.
I don't have that one.
Oh, you didn't have that one?
Nope.
Maybe I forgot to get that one.
Yep.
Okay, I'll talk about it a little bit, even though you didn't get the article here. I forgot to bring it up before the show. Mm-hmm. Niche sports are really starting to emerge. Even on network TV. Network TV is willing to, and cable TV are willing to pay for very niche sports. This is kind of relevant because it came up during the Jibby Jab era. During the Jibby Jab era, there were no sports, or there was very little sports. So what happened at that time is in Russia, they started renting warehouses and getting normal people to compete against each other so people could place bets on fringe betting sites. Then mainstream betting sites started taking bets on these alternative events as well, but that showed there was a market for it. So now more mainstream niche sports are actually kind of having their day, and people are paying for the network rights to air these things. That being said, the WNBA is having a lot of backlash, and they are a niche sport, and they could actually be capitalizing on this. But instead of capitalizing, they're talking about going on strike. And what did they have on their jerseys the other day? It was a complete fumble on their part by putting "Pay us what you owe us." What people owe them is absolutely nothing. They actually owe the NBA over $200,000 per player if they had the same contract the NBA has, because they want to get paid more. The best way to get paid more is a profit sharing model, just like the NBA has with its players. I think it pays its players about 50%. The WNBA isn't involved in a profit sharing model because they're losing money year after year since its inception. With the emergence of Caitlin Clark, the WNBA actually has a real opportunity to become one of the main fringe sports that get big network deals and things like this, but they're messing it up by the treatment of Caitlin Clark and the way the WNBA players are constantly demanding to get paid more when nobody actually wants to watch it. Okay, let's go into the last article of the day, which is Temu here.
From the AP, Temu accused by EU regulators of failing to prevent sale of illegal products.
And what do you think about Temu? I've never ordered off of Temu.
No, I don't let you.
Constantly pops up, and it almost seems fraudulent how cheap these products have to be.
It is.
It's insane.
It is.
And I had to watch YouTube videos talking about somebody ordered something off Temu and a miniature thing came to their house.
And so that's also kind of why I'm against Amazon and Wish and all of these sites. I mean, Walmart is starting to do it as well. I just think the drop shipping market has been way too open, and where it's now mostly just fraud.
Yeah, and it's a shame what the drop shipping market's actually doing to jobs in the United States.
That too.
Truckers are the main blue-collar job for males in every city, not just in the United States, but most countries around the world. And these drop shipping companies are needing cheaper and cheaper and cheaper rates. So a lot of truck drivers are working for $100 a week, which is crazy, but they're having to pay for their own gas, their own food, their own insurance. After all those costs are taken off, there's a law that says the company has to give them at least $100 per week. So the fact that you have human truck drivers working for $100 per week and they still want to try to cut the cost even more, they're going to do this with AI trucks, self-driving trucks, things of this nature. And that's going to severely hurt truckers, and this is a primarily male-driven field. So where are all these people going to go? Where are all these blue-collar workers going to go? I'm really against self-driving vehicles, but especially self-driving trucks, because of the way it's going to hurt the human economy.
Not only that, but this very consumerist heavy mindset. While yes, I'm very for capitalism, the fact that people don't even understand or acknowledge the impacts of what they buy or why they're buying it or why they need 80,000 things of the same exact plush or toy or whatever. It just devalues what you actually have and makes you lose conscious and notion of even the value of money. And I do think it is a big, big problem, not only in the US and Canada, but for example, here in Mexico as well. A lot of people are getting too, in my opinion, too used to being able to purchase things without really understanding the need or why they're doing it. And it just becomes a compulsion.
Yeah, but I also
it's not good for people's brains.
Yeah, but I also think that's changing, and we're going to talk a little bit about that on tonight's political show. How is that changing? It's changing through these tariffs and Donald Trump, of all things. It's not something I thought that would actually, I didn't know the impact it would have, but after this EU deal, it looks like it's going to have a major impact. People are starting to pay attention where things are made, things are manufactured, local economies, things like this. Even though the countries like the EU cut a deal with the US for a 15% tariff, people in the EU are now going to start paying attention to, like, do we want to buy American products? Do we want to buy locally made? Do we want to really help locally made businesses? People in the US are really starting to pay attention, especially as manufacturing comes back to the US. They're going to have more options to buy US products. And this is really in everybody's face with these headlines with tariffs, where things are manufactured, where the raw materials are coming from. So this conversation of buying locally is really coming up in the biggest possible way, especially with nationalism rising around the world. People are going to want to buy locally made things if you can compete with internationally made goods. So.
Not just locally made things, but better made things. And I mean, Temu specifically, in my opinion, you're just in a not so roundabout way supporting the Communist Party of China.
So. Temu's just ridiculous. And actually, yeah, this was kind of the point I wanted to bring up and I almost forgot about. Tariffs didn't rise the price yet in the United States, and a lot of liberal progressive economists that didn't understand what Trump was kind of doing with the tariffs or don't understand why the prices aren't rising. But if you look at MAGA style economists or people that really know the inner workings of tariffs and thought it would work, they're saying the companies are eating the costs. A lot of these companies were saying they're working with 8% profit margins, but when you're looking into a lot of these Chinese companies, they were working with 30 to 50% profit margins because the product was so cheaply manufactured and it only had the look of a good product and it would break down after a couple of years. So they have, even at a 15% tariff, you take 15% tariff off a 30% profit margin, you're still making a 15% profit margin. So the reason prices aren't rising, the manufacturers themselves are eating the cost. Now that's not going to be in all areas. Products with small profit margins eventually will rise, like cars and things of this nature. But cheap Chinese made goods have such a large profit margin that the company can eat the cost, maintain the same price for the American consumer. Okay, well, that's it.
You want me to read into the article?
Yeah, oh, sorry, yeah. I forgot we didn't read the article there.
Chinese online retailer Temu was accused by European Union watchdogs on Monday of failing to prevent the sale of illegal products on its platform. The preliminary findings follow an investigation opened last year under the bloc's Digital Services Act, which, I mean, we've also discussed as a negative thing, but it's a wide-ranging rule book that requires online platforms to do more to keep internet users safe, quote-unquote, with the threat of hefty fines. The European Commission, the 27-nation bloc's executive branch, said its investigation found a high risk for consumers in the EU to encounter illegal products on Temu's site. Investigators carried out a mystery shopping exercise that found non-compliant products on Temu, including babies, toys, and small electronics, it said. Temu said in a brief statement that it will continue to cooperate fully with the commission. The commission didn't specify why exactly the products were illegal, but noted that a surge of online sales in the bloc also came parallel rise with unsafe or counterfeit goods.
Yeah, and the United States, as well as the EU, have huge populations that are consumer populations. So if they start moving away from cheap Chinese manufactured goods, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting what this Chinese tariff deal comes in, because after this EU tariff deal, and it's interesting even how the mainstream media is promoting this tariff deal. They're saying Trump has had 6 tariff deals. Well, the EU tariff deal alone, how many countries are in the EU?
27, I believe.
So 20, that's like having 27 individual deals right there, plus the other 5 he's already had. So then it's really, though, you're seeing the global economy being reshifted towards the United States and away from China. It's going to be interesting, the deal China cuts with the United States. The fact that this EU tariff deal has come in, and that's includes 27 countries alone, gives the United States a lot more leverage over China. The framework of the Chinese deal is kind of there, but they haven't signed anything in hard ink yet. So I would almost expect Trump to be a little bit more hardline in the final days of the Chinese negotiation.
Maybe in this article and in the EU investigation, they didn't want to highlight what specifically was so worrying about Temu products, but there has been a lot of other investigations and confirmations that, for example, within baby products, there's dangerous levels of lead and other heavy metals that can actually break the skin barrier and go into the body, as well as cooking products laced with weird chemicals and things that are not compliant, quote unquote, with regulations. Not even in China, I believe. So the fact that there's so little checking and the price and the cost is so cheap, it's because it's made that way. And it's because it's not, nobody cares about the safety of them. It's at that cost.
That's a lot more of a China hawk when it comes to Chinese products. I've been fairly I grew up pretty poor, so I like Chinese. I generally like Chinese products.
And that is another part of the conversation, the fact that this sometimes is all people can afford, but maybe instead of saying, oh, let's excuse it let's excuse the poor regulations, let's excuse the poor business practices even of places like Temu and Wish, why not just create a better incentive within the US or within Western markets that do have those regulations to keep people, even at the lowest margins of society, safe as well?
Yeah, like I was kind of saying, I totally agree with that. But like I was saying, I've been pretty lenient on Chinese products because I kind of grew up with them. That's kind of, poor people like Chinese products because that's all they can afford. At least provide something to the market. But recently there's been a lot of things coming out about these Chinese products that are absolutely frightening, not just with baby products and things like this, but the BYD. There's been a lot of propaganda against BYD, and I always kind of fought against that propaganda because I figured, cheap cars are good for everybody as long as you can get them. But man, the BYD batteries, now the scandal has completely come out, and it may collapse the what?
I've been speaking about this for ages, and you kept
now
saying...
it was like this all over here, and I'm like, did I say something? Because usually she goes like that when I say a word that's supposed to be censored and I'm not supposed to say. But yeah, she's been talking about this for a long time, and I always completely disagreed with her. Yes. I thought they were doing great things when it comes to battery manufacturing, stuff like this, because they had the blade battery that could hold a longer charge by redesigning the way a general battery was designed. A lot of that was swept under the rug to inflate the price of BYD. I was watching a documentary on how these batteries were manufactured now, and it's these blade batteries. They want to fit more cells in there, but the price they had to pay is they put all these cells back to back to back, and then they glue them all together. So it's impossible to replace one battery cell. And once one battery cell goes bad and it swells up, it compromises the entire battery cell. So it could potentially blow up. And that's why you're seeing a lot of Chinese cars are blowing up. But that being said, because you're not able to replace the one cell, which would be a lot cheaper to do at the cost of the person that owns the car.
And is that how it works usually with other cars?
No. Oh. You're having to replace the whole battery. the whole battery actually costs more than the price of the car itself. So a poor person can't afford to buy a whole new car, and they can't replace one cell in the battery. They can't replace the whole battery because it costs the price of a new car. What do? They just keep driving it, and that's the risk you have because you're selling it to a more poor consumer that can't necessarily buy a new car once the battery cell goes bad, and it's impossible to replace one battery cell. This is a bad equation. A lot of these BYD cars are brand new, and we're not going to see a mass explosion of these cars for a few years down the road. I'm very concerned with what's going to happen now with these things.
Especially here in Mexico, because they entered the market so openly by our current government.
Yeah, BYD cars are extremely popular here in Mexico City, and I really didn't start looking into BYD until I moved here. And there was so much propaganda around BYD. I was actually very supportive of it in the beginning, but seeing the design of these batteries, these are extremely dangerously designed batteries. I'm not necessarily against BYD. Right now I am, because they can potentially blow up and people can't afford to replace the cars. I would like to see BYD just redesign their batteries, and maybe I'll stop talking crap about them. Have cells you can actually replace at a cheap cost.
And it's not just a risk to the person that owns the car, but also if that battery were to go faulty in the middle of the road, it's a risk for everybody else around them. And the fact that they're didn't want to say anything, they didn't want to talk about their design and then try to hide it is what makes it worse. But it also makes me question all the other Chinese electric car companies that have inserted themselves into the Mexican market, and with such cheap prices that most people decided to go for those without really researching it properly. So now,
also the design of the internal liquids that are in the battery with this blade design, there's a secondary flaw within the batteries they're finding out now, only that the cars have been out for so long. I guess this flaw was known by other battery designers, but with this blade battery, it was proprietary design, so people didn't realize they used the cheapest possible manufacturing method. Over time, it's not able to accurately know if it's at 100% charge. So in the beginning, it would charge to 100% normally, but as the flaw of how much charges in the battery deteriorates year after year, it will begin to overcharge the battery, which if you have a swollen battery cell in one of those cells, the car will again be at risk of blowing up. So I would really like to see BYD create a new battery cell method, because the one they have is extremely dangerous. I'm no longer a supporter of BYD, and I have been for the last few years since I moved to Mexico City. The cabs that are primarily used in Mexico City, a lot of them are BYD, and there's a ton of internal space. I was like, oh.
Not cabs, the Ubers. The cabs are normal cars.
I said, these things are great. I was actually telling Nat we should buy a BYD. No. We recently got a car. I'm glad we didn't get a BYD, and a lot of things are starting to come out that may collapse the BYD Chinese car market. And also, I researched a lot about BYD.
I was going to say also a boat blew up on its way to a Mexican port with a bunch of Chinese import cars, electric vehicles.
Now I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, meanwhile, I'll read Rafa. Hello, Rafa. He says, hello, have a great week. Thank you.
We're coming on an hour early Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So hopefully around 11:15 Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Tuesday and Thursday, we're going to be making more edited content and going out and about, hopefully arranging debates on the channel as well.
Interviews, yeah. And Rafa also says, all Chinese batteries are crap. MG car batteries, I've also spoken badly against those. The common ones last less than 2 years.
Yeah, and a lot of them are actually contracted out through the BYD manufacturers as well. That's why all Chinese cars are pretty much compromised at this point. And I was watching Chinese car show. I like watching what's going on in China, India. I watch a lot of stuff throughout the day. Chinese car show, I was absolutely flabbergasted at how cheap they're selling these cars for. They have some cars that sell for $6,000 and $7,000. How is that even possible for a new car? And then they have much bigger cars that are selling for $16,000. And then I'm watching them interview the car manufacturer, and the car manufacturer is literally saying, "Yeah, we make them for so cheap because we don't even care about the tariffs." because a lot of countries have tariffs other than just the United States. But he says even at 100% tariffs, our cars are going to be cheaper to buy in these other countries. But what he failed to say is the batteries are so badly designed, they'll work for the first couple of years, just like Rafa said. And even the better designed batteries, the flaws are starting to emerge where these things will blow up over time because they're glued together and they're using the cheapest manufacturing methods possible. And you can't just replace individual cells. I would rather pay double the price for a battery so I could take one cell out if something goes wrong with it, or over time, I can more cheaply replace the battery. Because you're only going to have that car for maybe 5 or 10 years. These cars aren't made to last anymore. But a way to extend the life of these cars are going to be to replace batteries or battery cells.
And people always wince at me when I go so hard against China or say that essentially right now still almost anything that comes from China is like anything else you'll buy from China. It'll look nice and work for a little bit, but then it'll break down. And it doesn't mean I'm going against Chinese people specifically. I think they're living under a dictatorial regime. I'm going against the party and the way they've decided to try to get their economy back up while just basically copying it from everybody else and also hiding a lot of things that they're doing wrong just to continue in their eternal search for progress that is just making everything worse. So I wanted to make that point clear and at the same time talk about being openly able to talk the dangers that comes with accepting all of these cheap manufactured goods that look very nice on the outside. I mean, a lot of these cars are copying the styles of other very luxurious cars like MG does and like BYD does as well. So they look very nice on the road, but people have to start learning that that's not the most important thing about a car.
And I will also say that, man, I'm really liking these Trump tariffs more and more every day. When they first came into being, I was generally skeptical of how they would kind of turn out. I'm generally a Trump supporter, but I said, man, I don't know. Everything seems to be turning out very well with this EU tariff deal coming in. What we're seeing now, we're having the United States could become a manufacturing base to compete with China, which would be nice over time. But we're also seeing countries like Russia increase their manufacturing base. Countries where these tariffs are being put on the people within those countries, you're seeing nationalism really rise, and they're saying we want manufacturing in our country. People are wanting to buy local. So even if you don't agree with necessarily a U.S. tariff, this is having an add-on effect of people in other countries wanting to manufacture and buy in their own countries. I think Mexico will be a prime example of this. Mexico is very well set to have a lot of manufacturing built here and then sell it locally. They have a large growing middle-class population as well. So the add-on effect of not just tariffs benefiting the U.S., it's waking up the consciousness of people in these individual countries that manufacturing is good to have in your own country.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, Mexico did, in partnership with China, hilariously enough, did say that they're going to try to manufacture a Mexican electric car. That looks ridiculous, but that's a whole other story. I might actually make, in English and Spanish, now that I'm doing that, a video about cheap Chinese cars, because that's been a topic of mine for such a long time.
Well, I know a lot about it as well, so I can definitely help you. She constantly hounds me to help her with her research and scripts, and I just I don't have time. I'm always doing these lives, but now we have Tuesdays, Thursdays where we're doing edited videos. So yeah, I'd be more than happy to help on that.
And Rafa says, LTH batteries are the best ones for cars here in Mexico. Not a commercial, just an advice for your recently bought car. Thank you. And luckily for us, the car we got from a friend, it was like a year old. And because they noticed they needed something a bit bigger for their own family, they were like, and they have more money. They just bought another one outright. And they were like, oh, do you want to buy this one off of me? And we were like, yeah, sure. Like it came right at this perfect time where we were looking. And Rafa also says, we should also impose heavy tariffs to China here in Mexico. Yes.
The Chinese economy, the Chinese.
More in his comment.
Well, one moment. You can read it in a minute.
Okay.
I'm very surprised at the tariff deals Trump's managed to get, and he saved the best two for last, which is Mexico and Canada, which is going to affect the American economy the most. He has the most leverage going into those two deals. He generally likes Mexico as much as people think he doesn't. He's always favored Mexico and given them favorable deals when it came to different international trade deals. above Canada. So next week, it's rumored that Mexico has their deal coming in. I hope they do, and I hope they didn't play games because Canada is in a very tight predicament right now, and I think he's going to try to break Canada because they did try to play games with him.
And right now, the U.S. also has Mexico and shamebound by the balls that she doesn't have because of all the other investigations they're doing. We can talk more about this in the politics show.
Yeah.
But Rafa also says, I'm just going to read your comment over again. We should also impose heavy tariffs to China here in Mexico. Local producers are losing a lot. China is our direct competition for a lot of manufacturing. And specifically, the Morena government didn't want to notice that and didn't want to acknowledge that and rather go into partnership with them. But what they don't understand is that China comes in, builds you cheap infrastructure, gives you cheap deals, and then tries to take over.
Hold on. That's not it. And then they bring in their own workers from China to work those factories. And if there's legislation against that, they'll literally pay to get that legislation changed. I used to work in the mining industry in Canada, and year after year, they were paying tens of millions of dollars to get legislation changed in Canada so they could try to get Chinese miners into China and pay them a fraction of the wage. So yeah, I really hope Mexico wakes up and starts manufacturing themselves. If all these countries just start waking up and seeing it's a net benefit to manufacture in country, even if they lose money in the short term, in the long term, it makes you more self-independent as a country. It will absolutely break China's back, and it will be a great benefit for the world. And I'm not necessarily a China hawk. I don't want to see the U.S. go to war with China, and I'm a little bit wary of this EU trade deal. I think in the background, Europe might really want a war and might privately trying to get Trump to commit to a lot of war type policies that weren't put in necessarily the forefront. Okay. Was that it?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks for tuning in today. We're going to be having our pop culture show in the morning, political show at night, and Nat also has a
Spanish live.
Live
in Spanish.
Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We're going to start taking Tuesdays and Thursdays off so we can make more edited content. Nat actually shot 6 videos this weekend, 3 in English, 3 in Spanish. So those are ready for release this week. But she has to edit them throughout the week. That's why she kind of needs Tuesdays, Thursdays off. Also, I'm hoping to go have 1.
Okay, sorry.
One video this week about Tim Hortons and Mexico, comparing it to Canada. So I actually want to go to Tim Hortons and hopefully we can film a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
And well, I guess I can mention quickly, since mostly it's Rafa and a few other people here. This week, I'll be talking about in the edited videos about the feminism scandal in Mexico that is censoring everybody, including women, and using the legal framework to censor everybody under the guise of feminism and security. Then a story about Meghan Markle and their Netflix deal for Wednesday, which is completely fallen off now. And on Friday, a very, very interesting thing I found about Mexico's declining population, which is almost lower than than Japan and South Korea. And it's insane that people here are not, raising the alarm about that.
Yeah, I had no idea about the collapsing birth rate in Mexico. I knew it was declining. I didn't know the extent. It's on par with some of the biggest collapsing birth rates in the world.
It's lower than those. That's the worrying
and
thing.
Nobody's talking about it because when a lot of American content creators, when they talk about Mexico, they view it as a religious country, and they say the birth rate isn't falling as steep as the U.S. It's even more steep than the U.S. It's very concerning.
Yes. Sorry.
What was the first video you said you were going to do?
For today, it's the Chicharito censorship.
Yeah, the censorship is crazy here in Mexico. We've been doing a few stories about that, and the government's making people apologize on X, and they're citing laws that have to do with feminism.
With, women's, violence against women.
Violence against women. So if you speak ill about women as a general population, they consider that violence against a woman, and you'll have to apologize on X, which is nuts.
Not just apologize, but face sanctions.
And a re-education camp or course.
Some people have had to go through violence against women course, very much like the Cultural Revolution. But Rafa also says, I love Tim Hortons. I always go there when I travel to Querétaro. And that might be because you're going to the Mexican Tim Hortons.
Yeah, Tim Hortons in Canada is actually one of the cheapest places you can buy coffee. That's why it's so popular in Canada. It's like 1/3 the price of going to a Starbucks. That's why the working class tend to go to Tim Hortons. But the amount of homelessness, violence, drug addicts within the Tim Hortons, the foreign workers scandal within the Tim Hortons within Canada, the general rundown nature of the Tim Hortons within Canada is off the charts. When I came to Mexico City and I said, oh, they have Tim Hortons here? Let's go over there.
I didn't even know.
Because it was familiar. It was so nice. I was so impressed with the Tim Hortons in Mexico City. Then after that, every time I went seeing a Tim Hortons in Mexico City, which there's quite a few, I would always tell, Natalia, let's go in, let's go look at it. I thought it was maybe just the one. No, it's every Tim Hortons in Mexico City. There's no crime. No violence. It's extremely nice. There's plenty of seating. They even have conference rooms that the customers can use within the Tim Hortons within Mexico City. I'm extremely impressed. But the contrast between Tim Hortons in Mexico City compared to Vancouver is like night and day. And that's not the same with most corporations, because Starbucks in Vancouver compared to a Starbucks in Mexico City, you wouldn't even know what city you're in. They're so similar. But Tim Hortons is dramatically different. And
I think Tim Hortons shows very well how other people view Canada and Canadians, and that would be the Mexican Tim Hortons, where everything looks clean and nice, and it's like a almost fancy, comparable to Starbucks coffee shop. And in Canada, Canadians themselves see themselves as Canadian Tim Hortons, which is run down. Nobody cares about it. Just import in all your foreign workers and let everybody piss all over the store.
Yeah, I live in Mexico City now. I've lived in Vancouver, Canada. But if I hadn't been to these two cities and you asked me to describe what I imagine a Tim Hortons in Vancouver, I would have described you the Mexico City Tim Hortons. And if I were people asked me to describe the Mexico City Tim Hortons, if I had never been here, how do I imagine it? I would have imagined how the downtown Vancouver Tim Hortons are. They're absolutely disgusting.
And also in general, with fast food places, which yes, sometimes I go get McDonald's fries, even though they're not the best for you. It is very different how people here, like how well-kept restaurants here are in general, or even fast food, compared to in Canada, where McDonald's also is used as just a warm place to put bodies in.
Okay, and let's kind of end it there before we give them the whole video.
Yes. Okay. Sorry.
Okay. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back tonight, probably around 6 p.m. Mexico City time. And then Nat's going to have her show at her regular time. We're kind of going to put our show together on before her show rather than after, so I can have an early night or do some work before I go to bed.
And to catch the English audience as well a bit more. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much, Rafa, for your comments, and we'll see you tonight.
Adios.